Admiral Kethvara's forearms trembled as she read the latest battle report. Her insect-like compound eyes reflected the red warning lights that flashed across the command center. Around her, alien officers from dozens of species worked desperately at their stations, but their movements had grown slow and tired. They all knew the truth now. They were losing. The massive view screen showed a map of known space. What had once been thousands of green dots representing peaceful worlds was now mostly red. The Void Swarm had consumed nearly half of all civilized life in just 2 years. Entire species had vanished overnight. Worlds that had existed for millions of years were now empty husks floating in space. "Admiral," called out Dr. Yela Trosses, her feathered head drooping with exhaustion. The tall, bird-like scientist approached Kethvara's command platform. "The Zephyrian Crystal Fleet has fallen. All 17 battleships were destroyed, defending their homeworld." Kethvara felt her heart sink. The Zephyrians had possessed the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their crystal ships could bend space itself and shoot beams of pure energy that could crack planets. If they had fallen, what hope did anyone else have? "What about the Luminal Collective?" Kethvara asked, though she already feared the answer. "Gone," Dr. Trosses whispered. The energy beings tried to merge with the Void Swarm ships to stop them from within. The swarm absorbed them all. We detected their death screams across 40 star systems. The command center fell silent, except for the quiet hum of failing life support systems. Kethvara looked around at her officers. She saw species that had once been proud warriors now cowering at their posts. The reptilian Skarn, who normally stood tall and fierce, were hunched over their controls. The gas-based Mistral beings flickered weakly in their containment suits. A young communications officer, one of the blue-skinned Aquari, raised a webbed hand. "Admiral, we're receiving evacuation requests from over 300 worlds. They want to know where to run. Tell them." Kethvara started, then stopped. Where could they run? The Void Swarm moved faster than any known ship. They consumed energy itself, making them immune to most weapons. Their biomechanical vessels grew stronger with each world they devoured. Tell them to head for the Outer Rim territories. Maybe they can buy some time. Dr. Trosses stepped closer. "Admiral, there might be another option. I've been searching through the old archives, looking for any species we might have missed. Any technology or weapon that could help us. And?" Kethvara's voice held no hope. "I found something strange. Records from about 150 years ago. References to a species called humans that were classified as Hazardous Entity Level 9. The Admiral's compound eyes focused on the scientist. Level 9 was the highest danger rating in Galactic Council history. It was reserved for species that posed existential threats to other life forms. What happened to them? Dr. Trosses activated a holographic display. Ancient texts rolled past in the old Council languages. They were quarantined to their home system and a few nearby worlds. The records are incomplete, but it seems they came from what the Council called Death Worlds. Death Worlds? Several officers had gathered around to listen. Planets that should not be able to support complex life. Worlds with crushing gravity, poisonous atmospheres, extreme radiation, and constant geological disasters. According to these files, humans not only survived on such worlds but thrived on them. A Skarn officer hissed in disbelief. "Impossible. No species can survive in such conditions." Dr. Trosses continued reading. The reports describe humans as extremely aggressive and adaptable. They apparently considered conflict and struggle to be natural parts of life. The Council decided they were too dangerous to integrate into galactic society. Kethvara felt a spark of something she had not felt in months. Not hope, exactly, but curiosity. What kind of threats did they pose? The files mentioned that humans had already begun something they called terraforming, changing entire worlds to suit their needs. But instead of making worlds more comfortable, they often made them more challenging. The council was afraid they would try to change other species' homeworlds too, so they were exiled, quarantined. A defensive grid was established around their territory with orders to destroy any ship that tried to leave or enter. The command center buzzed with nervous energy. Several officers exchanged glances. The idea of seeking help from a species considered too dangerous for civilization seemed insane. But then again, they were facing extinction. "Admiral," Dr. Trosses said softly, "there's something else. The quarantine grid stopped transmitting status reports 50 years ago. We don't know if the humans are even still alive." A new alarm began blaring. The main view screen shifted to show a live feed from the outer defense line. Massive black shapes were moving through space, their surfaces writhing like living tissue. The void swarm had broken through humanity's last major defensive position. "Time to impact?" Kevvara asked. 18 hours until they reached the inner systems, reported the communications officer. 42 hours until they arrive here at Nexus Prime. Kevvara made a decision that would have been unthinkable just hours before. "Dr. Trosses, prepare a long-range message probe. Send it toward human space. If they're still alive, maybe they'll respond." "What should the message say?" The Admiral looked at the view screen, showing the approaching doom of her civilization. "Tell them that the species that exiled them is about to die. Tell them that everything they once knew is being destroyed. And ask them if they remember what mercy feels like." Dr. Trosses nodded and hurried away to prepare the message. Around the command center, officers continued their work with slightly more energy. It was a slim hope, reaching out to a species that had every reason to hate them. But it was the only hope they had left on as Kevvara watched the void swarms advance on the main screen. She wondered what kind of beings could survive on worlds that would kill most species in minutes. She wondered if such beings would even want to help their former captors. Most of all, she wondered if humanity had survived their isolation, or if the quarantine had simply created a tomb that would now mock the galaxy's desperation in 18 hours. They would know if the Council's greatest fear might become their only salvation. Dr. Yila Trosses had not slept in 36 hours. Her office was scattered with datapads, holographic displays, and empty food containers. The message probe had been sent toward human space 12 hours ago, but there had been no response yet. While they waited, she had thrown herself into researching everything the archives contained about the mysterious species. What she found terrified her. "Admiral Kevvara to archive section." 7. Came the voice through her. "Communicator." "On my way," Trosses replied. Gathering her most important findings, she found the Admiral in the archive's main viewing room, along with Captain Zoan of the aquatic Murtai species and several other senior officers. Zoan's pale blue skin glistened under the lights, his large black eyes reflecting the concern they all felt. "What have you discovered, Doctor?" Kevvara asked. Trosses activated the main display. Images of worlds appeared that made several officers step backward in shock. "These are some of the planets where humans lived. This first one is called Australia, their homeworld's southern continent. The surface temperature regularly reached 50 degrees Celsius. Poisonous creatures lived everywhere. Spiders whose bite could kill in minutes. Snakes with venom that dissolved internal organs. Something called a drop bear that the records suggest was particularly feared." Captain Zoan's gills fluttered nervously. How did they survive? They didn't just survive. They flourished. Look at this. The display showed another world. This planet, called Siberia, had temperatures that dropped to -50 degrees. Humans lived there by choice. They built cities in these conditions. That's impossible, muttered a scarred officer. Such cold would freeze our blood solid. Dr. Trosses continued. It gets worse. This is a moon they called Titan. Thick atmosphere filled with methane. Liquid hydrocarbon lakes. Humans established mining colonies there and actually complained that it was too easy because the gravity was low. She switched to another image. This is what they called a volcanic world. The surface was constantly erupting. Toxic gases filled the air. Earthquakes happened daily. The humans who lived there said it reminded them of home. Admiral Kethvara's forearms crossed over her chest. What kind of species chooses to live in such places? That's what worried the council, Trosses said. The humans didn't just adapt to harsh conditions. They sought them out. They had a saying, if it doesn't try to kill you, it's not worth doing. The council psychologists classified them as having a species-wide death wish. Captain Zoan spoke up. Maybe they were just desperate for living space. No, Trosses pulled up more files. They had dozens of paradise worlds available. Beautiful planets with perfect weather, abundant resources, and no dangerous life forms. The humans called these worlds boring and used them only for growing food. They preferred to live on worlds where simple survival was a daily challenge. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These beings actively chose to live in conditions that would be considered the worst possible punishment for most species. There's more, Trosses continued. The humans developed something called extreme sports, activities designed to risk death for entertainment. They would throw themselves off cliffs with only cloth wings for protection. They would descend into deep ocean trenches for fun. They would climb mountains in frozen wastelands just to say they had done it. That's insane, whispered a communications officer. The council thought so too. But look at this military analysis. The display showed battle reports from the few conflicts humans had been involved in before their quarantine. Human soldiers could fight effectively in any environment. Underwater, in space, in poisonous atmospheres, on worlds with crushing gravity. They seemed to have no environmental limits. Admiral Kethvara studied the reports carefully. What kind of weapons did they use? That was another concern. Humans had a concept called overkill. Their weapons were designed to cause maximum damage in all possible conditions. They had projectile weapons that could function in any atmosphere or lack of atmosphere. Chemical weapons that worked on multiple species. And they showed no hesitation about using whatever was necessary to win. Captain Zoan's skin had turned a darker blue. Are you suggesting we try to contact a species of natural-born killers? I'm suggesting, Trosses said quietly, that we're already facing natural-born killers. The Void Swarm destroys everything it touches. Maybe we need something equally ruthless to fight it. A new officer entered the room, breathing heavily. Admiral, we've received a response to our message probe. Every being in the room turned toward him. What kind of response? Kethvara asked. It's unusual, Admiral. The probe was intercepted at the edge of human space by something our sensors couldn't fully identify. It appeared to be a ship, but it was operating inside a stellar corona. The heat levels should have destroyed any known technology. What did they say? The officer looked uncomfortable. The exact message was, still here. Still don't like visitors. Why should we care if you're dying? Then they sent the probe back with additional data. Dr. Trosses quickly accessed the probe's memory banks. New information flooded the display. Current images of human worlds appeared, and the gathered officers gasped in shock. The humans had not just survived their quarantine. They had expanded. Colonies existed inside asteroid belts. Cities floated in the upper atmospheres of gas giants. Mining operations functioned on the surface of worlds so close to their stars that the rock itself glowed red hot. Look at this, Trosses whispered, pointing to one image. They've built habitats inside active volcanoes. They're using the molten lava as a power source. Another image showed vast ships that appeared to be carved from solid meteors, bristling with weapons that no other species would consider practical. Admiral, Captain Zoan said slowly, I think I understand why the Council was afraid of them. But I also think I understand why we need them. Kethvara nodded grimly. Prepare a diplomatic mission. Captain Zoan, you lead it. Take a small fleet, but keep your weapons powered down. If we're going to ask monsters for help fighting monsters, we need to show that we're serious about wanting their aid. What if they refuse? Zoan asked. The Admiral looked at the countdown timer showing 34 hours until the Void Swarm reached the cold worlds. Then we die. But if they accept, she gestured toward the images of humans thriving in impossible conditions. Maybe we finally found something the Void Swarm can't digest. As Captain Zoam left to prepare his mission, Dr. Trosses continued studying the human data. One file caught her attention. It was labeled Human Philosophy Summary. She opened it and read a single line that made her feathers stand on end. Pain is temporary. Death is permanent. Everything else is just weather. She realized they weren't just asking for help from a dangerous species. They were asking for help from beings who had turned suffering itself into a way of life. Captain Zoan had never been more terrified in his life. And that was before he even saw the humans. His small diplomatic fleet had been traveling toward human space for 6 hours when the sensors started showing impossible readings. The ship's computers kept insisting that massive objects were moving through a radiation-soaked nebula that should have fried any electronic systems instantly. Captain, called his sensor operator, a nervous young Aquari whose skin had turned pale with fear. Something is approaching from inside the Gamma-7 Nebula. That's impossible, Zoan replied. The radiation levels in there would kill any crew in minutes and melt most ship hulls in seconds. Yes, sir, but it's definitely artificial. And it's big. The view screen flickered as it tried to penetrate the radiation fog. Slowly a shape emerged that made Zoan's crew gasp. It was a ship, but unlike anything they had ever seen. It appeared to be built from a hollowed-out asteroid, its rocky surface scarred and blackened. Weapon ports dotted its hull like craters on a moon. Most shocking of all, the entire vessel was glowing with heat that would have vaporized their own ships. There, hailing us, reported the communications officer. On screen, the image that appeared made several of Zoan's crew members take a step backward. The human was clearly female, but she looked like she had been carved from stone. Her dark hair was short and practical. Scars crossed her face and arms. Her eyes were a cold gray that seemed to look right through the camera. Behind her, Zoan could see other humans working at stations that were glowing red hot. I'm Commander Sarah Chun of the Outer Rim Defense Force, the human said. Her voice was calm but carried an edge that made Zoan's gills flutter. You're trespassing in human space. Turn around and leave or we'll escort you out. Captain Zoan straightened his posture. Commander Chun, I'm Captain Zoan representing the Galactic Council. We've come to request urgent assistance. Our entire civilization is under attack by an extragalactic force called the Void Swarm. Chun's expression didn't change. We know. We've been watching your war for months. Your species are weak. You fight like you're afraid to get hurt. The insult stung, but Zoan pressed on. We're dying out there. Entire species have been wiped out. We need help. From the same people who locked us away because we were too dangerous for your precious civilization. Chun's voice grew colder. Why should we care what happens to you? Because, Zoan said desperately, if we fall, you're next. For the first time, Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Captain, do you see that nebula your ship is struggling to scan through?" "Yes, we use it for target practice. Our children learned to fly in radiation storms that would cook your crew alive. The void swarm might be scary to you, but to us they're just another Tuesday problem." Zoan felt his hopes sinking. "Commander, please. Billions of innocent lives are at stake." Chun paused for a moment, then spoke to someone off screen. "Marcus, show our visitors the engine room." The camera view switched, and Zoan's crew cried out in shock. A huge human was working inside what appeared to be an active nuclear reactor. The man's skin was covered in radiation burns that he seemed to ignore completely. He was using his bare hands to adjust components that glowed white-hot. "That's Chief Engineer Marcus Torres," Chine's voice continued. "He's from a high-gravity world where the atmospheric pressure would crush your bodies flat. The gravity there is so strong that falling down breaks most bones. He considers this repair work relaxing." The camera switched again. Another human, a woman with pale skin and white hair, was working in what looked like a laboratory filled with materials that glowed with deadly radiation. Dr. Elena Vasquez. "She's our biotechnician. The world she grew up on bathes everything in radiation that mutates most life forms into monsters. Her people developed cellular repair systems that let them heal from almost any injury. She's currently working with samples of void swarm biomatter that would dissolve your ship's hull on contact." The camera returned to Chun. "You want to know why we should help you? It's not because we like you. It's not because we forgive you for locking us away. It's because we're bored. Bored." Zoan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Do you know what it's like to be a species that thrives on challenge and then be forced to stay in one small area of space for a century and a half? We've colonized every dangerous world we could find. We've turned moons into fortresses and asteroids into battleships. We fought pirates, raiders, and each other just to stay sharp. The Void Swarm represents the first real challenge we've had in decades." Behind Chun, alarms started sounding. She glanced at a display that showed massive black shapes moving through space. "Looks like you're out of time, Captain. The swarm just broke through your outer defenses. Estimate 12 hours until they reach your core worlds." Zoan felt his heart stop. "Will you help us?" Chun was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a tone that made Zoan's skin crawl with both fear and hope. "We'll help, but we fight our way with our rules. No questions about our methods. No complaints about collateral damage. And when this is over, you leave us alone again." "Agreed," Zoan said immediately. "Good. Tell your fleet to fall back to minimum safe distance. What we're about to do is going to get messy." The screen went dark, leaving Zoan and his crew staring at empty space. "Captain," the sensor operator called out, his voice shaking. "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout this entire sector. It's like the humans have been building weapons inside every asteroid, every moon, every piece of space debris." "How many ships do they have?" Zoan asked. "I can't tell, sir. The radiation is too intense. But there are dozens of power signatures. Maybe hundreds." Captain Zoan ordered his ships to retreat to a safe distance and sent a message back to Admiral Kethvara. "Humans have agreed to help. Recommend all Council forces withdraw to minimum safe distance. I don't think we want to be anywhere near the battle zone when they engage the enemy." As his ship pulled back, Zoan watched the nebula beginning to glow brighter. Whatever the humans were preparing, it was clear that the galaxy was about to see what happened when a species raised on Death Worlds decided to go to war. He just hoped that when it was over, there would still be a galaxy left to save. Admiral Kethvara watched her tactical display in stunned silence as the first reports came in from the battle zone. Her compound eyes struggled to process what the sensors were showing her. "Admiral, reported Captain Zoan from his position at the edge of human space. "You need to see this. The humans aren't fighting the way anyone expected." The main view screen lit up with live footage from reconnaissance drones. What Kethvara saw made her question everything she thought she knew about warfare. The Void Swarm had arrived in the contested system exactly as predicted. Hundreds of their biomechanical ships moved like a living shadow across space, their dark holes absorbing energy from nearby stars. They had already begun their usual tactic of surrounding and draining the local sun, but the humans were nowhere to be seen. "Where are they?" Kethvara asked. "Wait for it." Zoan's voice came through the communicator. Suddenly, the star itself seemed to explode. Massive streams of plasma erupted from the sun's surface, reaching out like enormous hands to grab the Void Swarm ships. The enemy vessels, which had been feeding on the star's energy, suddenly found themselves being pulled directly into the corona. How is that possible? Dr. Trosses gasped from her position beside the Admiral. The answer came as human. Ships began emerging from inside the plasma streams themselves. They rode the solar flares like ancient warriors riding horses into battle. Their hulls glowed white-hot, but their weapons were already firing. "They've been hiding inside the star," Zoan reported, his voice filled with awe. "Their ships are built to operate in stellar coronas. They used the sun as camouflage and turned it into a weapon. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Human vessels moved through space environments that should have destroyed them instantly. When Void Swarm ships tried to escape the stellar trap, they found human forces waiting in the asteroid belt. But these weren't ordinary asteroids anymore. "Admiral," called the sensor technician, "those rocks are moving under their own power. The humans have turned the entire asteroid field into mobile weapons platforms." Massive chunks of stone and metal began accelerating toward the Void Swarm fleet. As they moved, hidden weapon systems activated. Plasma cannons emerged from crater-like openings. Missile pods unfolded from what had looked like natural rock formations. Entire asteroids split apart to reveal battleships hidden inside. The Void Swarm tried their usual energy absorption tactics, but the humans had prepared for this too. Instead of traditional energy weapons, they were using kinetic projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic launchers. Chunks of dense metal struck Void Swarm ships with the force of small moons. "They're using the laws of physics as weapons," Dr. Trosses whispered. The battle moved to a nearby gas giant, where the Void Swarm hoped to use the planet's magnetic field for protection. Instead, they found more humans waiting. Ships emerged from deep within the planet's atmosphere, rising up through layers of crushing pressure and corrosive gases that would have dissolved any other vessels. "The humans have been living inside that gas giant," Zoan reported. "They've built cities in the atmospheric layers. They're using the planet's own storms as power sources for their weapons." What followed was a masterclass in environmental warfare. Human forces triggered massive lightning storms that arced between Void Swarm ships. They redirected hurricane-force winds to throw enemy vessels off course. Most terrifyingly, they began destabilizing the gas giant's upper atmosphere, turning sections of it into massive fusion bombs. The Void Swarm, for the first time in their invasion, began to retreat from a battle, but the humans weren't finished. "Admiral," Zoan's voice was tense. "The humans are pursuing. They're chasing the swarm toward the system's edge. Into open space? That gives the swarm the advantage." "No, Admiral. The humans aren't going into open space. They're going through it." The tactical display showed something impossible. Human ships were taking shortcuts through black holes and neutron stars, using the most dangerous objects in space as navigation points. They emerged from gravity wells that should have crushed them and radiation fields that should have sterilized their crews. A new voice cut through the communications channel. It was Commander Chun, speaking from her fortress ship. Admiral Kethvara, this is Sarah Chun. We're about to demonstrate why your species couldn't handle us in civilized space. What do you mean? Kethvara asked. You'll see. All Council forces maintain minimum safe distance of 10 light minutes from the following coordinates. Chun transmitted a location near the edge of the system. It was empty space, with nothing but a small cluster of dead planets orbiting a burned-out star. What's at those coordinates? Dr. Trosses asked. Target practice? Chun replied simply. The human fleet converged on the location, herding the fleeing void swarm before them. As the enemy ships approached the dead system, something extraordinary happened. The planets began to move. They're not planets, Zoan breathed. They're weapons. Planetary-scale weapons. The dead worlds were revealed to be massive hollow shells filled with human military technology. As the void swarm passed between them, the fake planets opened up like flowers, revealing weapon systems that defied imagination. Gravity manipulators turned local space into a maze of crushing forces. Artificial black holes were created and destroyed in precise patterns. Most shocking of all, the humans began firing something that Dr. Tross's sensors couldn't identify. What kind of weapon is that? Kethvara asked. Zoan's crew ran analysis on the energy signatures. Admiral, they're not firing energy or matter. They're firing concentrated entropy. They're literally shooting decay and dissolution at the enemy. The void swarm ships, which had proven immune to conventional weapons, began falling apart on a molecular level. Their biomechanical hulls rotted away in seconds. Their energy absorption capabilities failed as the very concepts of order and structure were stripped away from them. In less than 4 hours. A void swarm, fleet that had consumed dozens of worlds, was reduced to floating debris. But the most frightening moment came after the battle, when Commander Chun's voice returned to the communication channel. Admiral, we've analyzed the swarm's technology and biological structure. We know how to track them back to their source. We know how to follow them home. Kethvara felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Are you suggesting an invasion of extragalactic space? I'm suggesting we end this threat permanently. The swarm thinks in terms of consumption and absorption. We think in terms of complete elimination. They picked the wrong species to hunt. As reports continued to stream in from the battle zone, Kethvara realized that the galaxy's salvation might be more terrifying than its destruction had been. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had demonstrated that there were things in the universe more dangerous than the void swarm, and those things had been locked away in human space for a century and a half, growing stronger and more creative in their isolation. The final battle began at Nexus Prime, the heart of galactic civilization. Despite the human victory in the outer systems, the main body of the void swarm had continued its advance toward the Council's capital world. Billions of lives hung in the balance as the Dark Fleet approached the beautiful blue planet that had stood as a symbol of peace for thousands of years. Admiral, Kethvara stood on the command deck of the orbital defense platform, watching as evacuation ships fled the planet below. Her compound eyes tracked the countdown timer, showing 2 hours until the swarm's arrival. Around her, representatives of dozens of species worked frantically to coordinate the final defense. Admiral, Dr. Trosses approached with a datapad in her feathered hands. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. Commander Sarah Chun's scarred face appeared on the view screen. Behind her, Kethvara could see other humans preparing for something that made the alien admiral nervous. They moved with calm purpose, like people who had already accepted that they might not survive the next few hours. Admiral Kethvara, Chun said, we're implementing final protocols. All Council forces need to evacuate to a minimum distance of 50 light minutes. 50 light minutes? That would put us in the next star system. Yes, What we're about to do has never been attempted before, even by our standards. Dr. Trosses stepped forward. Commander Chun, our sensors show that this swarm fleet is 10 times larger than what you fought before. Their central hive mind ship is the size of a small moon. Chun smiled that cold smile that had become familiar. Good. We were getting worried this might be too easy. The transmission cut out, leaving the Council forces scrambling to implement the massive evacuation. As ships fled the Nexus system, long-range sensors tracked the approaching void swarm. The enemy fleet was enormous. A black cloud that seemed to devour light itself as it moved through space at the edge of the system. Captain Zoan watched from his observation vessel as human forces took positions that seemed strategically impossible. Ships positioned themselves inside gas clouds that should have destroyed them. Others took station near pulsars that emitted radiation deadly to all known life. Most incredibly, several human vessels disappeared entirely, apparently diving into the system's central black hole. They're not just using the environment as a weapon, Zoan reported to Admiral Kethvara. They're using the fundamental forces of the universe. The Void Swarm arrived exactly on schedule. Their massive hive mind ship led the advance, a writhing mass of biomechanical tissue the size of a small planet. Behind it came thousands of smaller vessels, all connected by streams of dark energy that pulsed like veins in a living body. For the first time, the aliens could see the swarm's true nature. It wasn't just a fleet of ships. It was a single enormous organism that fed on fear, despair, and the life force of entire civilizations. As it entered the system, tendrils of dark energy reached out toward Nexus Prime, already beginning to drain the planet's life. That's when the humans struck. The attack didn't come from ships or weapons. It came from the system itself. The star suddenly went supernova, but the explosion was controlled, focused, turned into a weapon of unimaginable power. Streams of stellar fire lanced out across space, not randomly, but guided by human technology that had learned to control the death throes of stars. How? Dr. Trosses gasped as she watched the impossible display. They destabilized the star, Zoan replied, his voice filled with awe and terror. They turned the entire solar system into a bomb. But the supernova was only the beginning. As the stellar explosion consumed the outer planets, human ships emerged from impossible hiding places. They rode the shock waves like surfers riding ocean waves. They used the expanding plasma as cover for weapons that fired concentrated pieces of dying stars. The Void Swarm tried to absorb the energy, as they had done with every other weapon used against them. But stellar fire was different from normal energy. It carried something the swarm couldn't digest, the fury of a species that had learned to thrive in the face of extinction. The battle reached its climax when Commander Chun's fortress ship, now glowing like a small sun from the heat it was absorbing, made a direct assault on the hive mind ship. Other species would have considered it suicide. To the humans, it was Tuesday. All ships' final protocols. Chun's voice rang out across the battlefield. If we don't make it back, tell them we went down swinging. The human ships converged on the massive hive mind in a coordinated assault that defied all military logic. Instead of staying at safe distances and using long-range weapons, they closed to point-blank range and engaged in what could only be called hand-to-hand combat between starships, human boarding parties, equipped with suits that could function in the vacuum of space and temperatures that would vaporize most metals, cut their way directly into the hive mind ship. They fought through corridors filled with toxic gases and living walls that tried to digest them. They used weapons that were banned by every galactic warfare convention. And they used them with the casual efficiency of people who had grown up in environments where everything tried to kill them. But the most decisive moment came when Dr. Elena Vasquez, the radiation-proof human biotechnician, reached the core of the hive mind. The swarm's central intelligence was a massive, brain-like structure that pulsed with the absorbed life force of countless dead worlds. Instead of trying to destroy it with weapons, Vasquez did something that horrified the watching aliens. She touched it directly, skin to alien flesh, and began to speak. "You feed on fear and despair," her voice was broadcast across the battlefield. "But we're humans. We don't know how to feel those things properly. We turn fear into excitement. We turn despair into motivation. You can't digest us because we're not food. We're poison." The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The hive mind, which had consumed the terror and anguish of entire civilizations, suddenly found itself trying to process the mental patterns of beings who treated mortal danger as entertainment. Human thoughts, human emotions, human attitudes towards survival and death flooded through the swarm's collective consciousness. The void swarm began to tear itself apart from within. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly turned on each other. The hive mind ships started convulsing as alien biology tried to understand minds that sought out challenge and conflict. The swarm's greatest weapon, its ability to feed on suffering, became its downfall when faced with beings who had turned suffering into a strength. Within 6 hours, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was retreating toward extragalactic space. Its forces scattered and its hive mind damaged beyond repair. As the smoke cleared, Admiral Cathvar received a final transmission from Commander Chun. The human commander looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just finished a particularly good workout. "The swarm is broken," Chun reported. "They won't be back." Turns out, existential dread doesn't work on people who use cosmic horror as home decorating. "Commander," Cathvar said carefully, "the Council would like to offer humanity full membership and reparations for the years of quarantine." Chun laughed, a sound that was somehow both warm and terrifying. "Thanks, but no thanks, Admiral. We like our space the way it is. Dangerous, unpredictable, and far away from anyone who thinks safety is more important than freedom. What will you do now?" "Go home. There's a black hole near our territory that we've been meaning to explore. Some of our scientists think there might be something interesting on the other side." As the human fleet departed, leaving behind only floating debris and the awed silence of a saved galaxy, Dr. Trosses turned to Admiral Cathvar. "What have we learned from all this?" the scientist asked. Cathvar watched the last human ship disappear into the distance, probably heading towards some cosmic phenomenon that would kill any other species just for looking at it wrong. "We learned that the things we feared most about humanity were also the things that saved us all," she replied. "And we learned that sometimes the galaxy needs monsters to fight monsters. We just got lucky that our monsters decided to be heroes." In the years that followed, the galaxy would remember the day when all hope was lost and humanity's Doomworlders appeared. Children of a dozen species would grow up hearing stories of the beings who lived on worlds that tried to kill them, who turned stars into weapons, and who saved civilization by being too stubborn to give up. And in the deepest, most dangerous parts of space, human colonies continued to spread, seeking out new challenges and making their homes in places where no sane species would ever want to live, because that's what humans did. When everything else gave up, they kept going. When the universe said, "Impossible," they said, "Hold my beer and watch this." And the galaxy was safer because of it.